Hey everybody, just want to give you a warning that there is a lot of audio issues, specifically on my end. So this episode is going to be a little wonky. Sorry about that. Thanks for your patience, and please give Steph some love because they've got something really cool. Alright, enjoy the episode. As tabletop gamers get older, some will eventually go on to have families of their own. When that happens, a number of those folks will look to introduce their kids to the wonderful world of role-playing games. That's the story of today's guest, Steph. Welcome to the wonderful world of TTRPGkids, a resource for you to show your favorite hobby to your little ones. Join me, Zach Walsh, and Steph as they show us different games, tools, and reviews on this week's episode of Schedule for Launch. Welcome to Schedule for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. This week, I'm really excited to be coming into a more family-friendly episode with a wonderful person that I've been talking to quite a bit, especially with how difficult it's been for us to actually get this recording.
Yeah, thanks
Steph,
for having
thank
me.
you so much for joining me this week on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been like 2 weeks.
Yep. I lost my voice for an entire week
together.
at one point, and like it just yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing after another.
Yes,
and,
yeah.
But here we are. We're finally doing it. So yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. So I'm excited. I have some people coming over tomorrow to play tabletop RPGs for the weekend, and I've been getting ready a little bit and excited for that. Excited to chat here. So I'm in a pretty good spot right now.
What are you hopping into then?
I have a little bit of a homebrew system that I kind of mashed together to make a rules light game for a few people who haven't tried tabletop RPGs before. So, and there's like a alternate universe, like modern day magical kind of world that they're going to be in. So it should be fun.
That's super cool. That's awesome. I'm so excited to hear, well, not more about that, but to hear more about you and tabletop role-playing games. I'd love to talk to you about that at another time. We're here to talk about something that's really cool. And like I said, folks, this is going to be a family-friendly episode, so no sailor's mouth from me tonight. We're going to be talking about TTRPGkids, which is a website, I should say, blog, kind of resource. I absolutely adore it. I do. It's user-friendly, and you're doing something really cool here with it. So before we talk about TTRPGkids, though, Steph, can you tell the audience a little about who you are and what you're doing in the space?
Yeah. I'm Steph. I am an engineer by trade. And currently a professor, an adjunct professor. For engineering. And I am also running the TTRPGkids blog, which is a resource for parents, teachers, caregivers, families, and creators to find out everything that they need about playing tabletop RPGs with kids or making them. So it's supposed to be kind of like a broad coverage of all of the all ages tabletop RPG topics. So I've kind of like shifted a little bit from the really technical kind of stuff to a lot of the more creative kind of storytelling aspects, and been having a lot of fun with it. So
it's like the wildest resume. Can I just say? Like, I saw that on the TTRPGkids. It's like, hi, I'm Steph. By day, I'm an engineer and university professor. And then anytime I'm not doing that, I'm raising a family and helping other people play games with their kids, which is so amazing, especially for all of us out there who, I say us like I have kids, all those people out there who want to introduce their kids to this hobby at a younger age, or don't want to try and cram the math of Dungeons and Dragons down the throat of their 3-year-old.
Yes. And there's like some like interesting nuances with it too that happen when you're running games with kids versus adults, because there's like social emotional aspects to it. There's like you said, the game mechanics, like parsing it down while still trying to get the feel. There's the type of adventures you run, the topics that they're interested. It's all different. So kind of there's a bit of a learning curve. So I'm hoping to like ease the learning curve a little bit, so it's a little more smoothed out instead of having all the ups and downs. So
can you talk a little bit about that though? Like on that? That's super interesting to me actually. Maybe this is the youth psychology part.
Yeah.
That's going into effect. But
yeah. I think maybe the best way to explain it is with one of like the stories that I have about playing with my kid. So we all know what like murder hobos are in tabletop RPGs, where like players will be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go around and like I could just do anything I want. There's no consequences because it's a game," or kind of that attitude. And that's maybe like a little bit of a trope and something that people are like, "Oh, kids are gonna do this and stuff." But like I've kind of found, at least with my 4-year-old, he will sometimes get in that kind of mode, but he's not doing it with the intent of malice. He's doing it from a curiosity standpoint of like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Or he's doing it because he thinks something cool will happen. And so it's like a really good learning opportunity, but from a social emotional standpoint, like the kids may be coming at it from a different angle than like an adult party who's like, well, we're going to play bad characters, maybe is coming at it with. One example that I really like was when I set him up with a quest to go get this magic scroll with an ice spell on it. So that way he could cast like this massive spell over top of a volcano and stop it from erupting and save like the island that they were on. He goes through the quest, gets the scroll, gets up to the top of the volcano, and I'm like, "Okay, are you going to cast this spell?" And he goes, "No, I'm going to throw it into the volcano." And I'm like, "Okay, why?" And he's like, "Well, because I want to see it explode. It'll be really cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what do you think's going to happen to the like village and the island and your wizard?" He's like, "But I want to see the volcano explode." And so we're trying to walk through like, what do you think the consequences are? And he was like really stuck on seeing the cool explosion. And I'm like, inhale, like really deep. I'm like, "Okay, let's do this. We're going to see what happens." So we have the volcano go and explode. And he is coming in here as a little bit of a guest. Hi, buddy.
We are gonna do the board game party tomorrow.
Yes, we got board game stuff tomorrow. He's off. I knew he was going to come in at some point. He's just happy to be here. I think he's gone out. So, he throws the scroll into the volcano, and we're like, "Okay," the volcano rumbles and the ground shakes, and then boom, we describe the big explosion. I ask him what he thinks happens, and he's like describing lava going everywhere, rocks flying out, and all the stuff from his science book. And then he's like, "Okay, I want my wizard to go get on the boat." And I'm like, "But the boat's gone and the wizard's gone too, because he blew up in the volcano." And then he goes, "Oh, can we go get lunch?" And it was just like, it totally didn't faze him. But then, like the next game that we played, I intentionally like set up a little bit of a hook where there was a room full of fireworks.
Oh, okay.
What would happen? And instead of lighting the fireworks inside the room, like he really wanted to do it. He kept going back there. He actually stopped and he was like, "Huh, maybe I should take these outside." And then like, actually, he's like, "Because my wizard could get hurt." And I'm like, "Okay, you got it." And so it was kind of like that, I think, shows some of the social emotional growth that kids will get out of it. Like, it's a good learning opportunity because now he's looking at things as, this can be dangerous. I'm going to think about my options before just jumping in and doing something on impulse. But then also, like it shows kind of how he's maybe approaching things. Like, he's going to do the thing that sounds the coolest and is maybe doesn't process like what all the consequences could potentially be, because it's just not where he's at right now.
Yeah.
So there's some differences like that can happen in games with kids.
What he's doing kind of reminds me of when you have those new players who are finally discovering that they can do whatever they want, but that's like the default.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And no matter how many times we play, like, it's always kind of there in the background, like we got to watch for it. Because sometimes there'll be like a really interesting hook and you can see him kind of like shifting in his seat, like wiggling back and forth. And like, I know he wants to do it. And I have to like let him make that choice. So that way he can learn. And that's like part of it is like that patience and giving him that autonomy. And that kind of takes practice sometimes from the parents' part. Because like, you get nervous about like, oh, if he's going in and fighting everything all the time, is this like indicative of certain behaviors? But it can actually be like a really good tool for kind of working out some of that frustration. And like part of the reason that I do the blog and write about all of this is because it's what I've learned. And my hope is that I can give like other facilitators that kind of leg up to say like, okay, this is normal and I don't need to be super concerned. And there are ways to handle this. Like, you don't have to totally ban, like, you don't have to say, no, you have to like save the town, because that's the good thing to do. You can use it as a learning experience and kind of flip that around into something positive later. So
we've been kind of talking around it for the past 10 minutes or so, but what exactly is TTRPGkids?
Yeah. So TTRPGkids is a website where I couldn't find a good one-stop shop resource for finding tabletop RPG information for my then 2.5-year-old kid. So I was like, I feel like I want to start introducing it. And I'd seen like, social media posts about people talking about it and things like that. And I couldn't find all of that information in one spot. It was kind of spread out everywhere. So I really like organizing things. I started organizing it for myself, and then somebody was like, this would be really good as a website. You can make a website, that's like a thing you can do. And I was like, oh, I should post that. So it kind of is all of my research, all of my experience is going into this blog so that way others can learn from it. But then also I'm highlighting, kid-friendly games that I find interesting or that we've played. I'm doing reviews so people can find out about a game before they buy it. And so they can learn about games that they haven't seen or heard of before, maybe. I do like interviews with people who are specifically in the field of tabletop RPGs for kids. So that way we can bring in like different experiences on the site, because I don't know everything. So, it's kind of making sure that I'm getting those other voices there. And, and I make some of my own games. There's kind of a wide smattering of things on there, but it is organized into kind of like, here's reviews, here's tips and tricks, project features and things like that. Just so that way.
Master list of games.
Yeah.
That one's nuts. There's like 250 games or more on there.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Those from my initial research. And then I've just been adding to it. Any games that I find that are tabletop RPGs that are made intentionally for kids, teens, or all ages, I've been putting on this list so people can search through it. And I am methodically going through and trying to review or, get like an author feature on all of them. So that way people can kind of like, oh, this one looks interesting. You can sort it by age. Say, I want a game for a 5-year-old. Check the titles to see which ones are about, princesses or dinosaurs or something. And then go to a review about it to get information. So it's kind of like a little info hub or web for more resources.
Yeah. That's actually kind of the basis for, I think, how we connected like over a year ago was Michael Lowe. I know that I did something for Luck of Legends with his original release of oh my gosh, sorry Michael, I know you're listening to this. Starfinder. Yes, that's it. Starfinder is a much different game. Oh my gosh, Starsworn is the one that I'm thinking of. But that's what I found out about TTRPGkids, because he raved about it, how much he loved it. There's a huge kids space, and like he was the first kids directed creator that I had on the show, and that was awesome. It was totally different for me because I was so used to all these really heavy themes or things that I wouldn't bring to an elementary school, is the best way to put it. And it just kind of opened my eyes to what's out there and how you can handle it. And then I found out about TTRPGkids and yourself and the insane amount of games that are actually curated for that entire subgenre. Like all ages makes sense to me. But when you just said, hey kids, that never was a thing that crossed my mind.
Yeah, and there's games out there for like 2 and up, 3 and up, 5 and up, and they work really well. And like some of them are like directed at like social emotional learning. There's one, Story Weaver just came out with this one called Little Gremlins. Yeah. And we did like some play testing and a review for it, and oh my gosh, it was so good. For like, it's, you put the kid in the position of taking care of this wild little gremlin who, despite like anyone's efforts, is going to cause mischief, and then your kid is journaling about it, or answering prompts and things like that. And one of the things we rolled up was like a bad habit that my kid has, where he likes to like go on the chair and then tip back, like really far, and we're like, don't get hurt. Like we don't want him like fall back and like hit his head or something. So he rolled up that his gremlin was on the chair, like playing on a rocking chair, and I'm like, well, what's the gremlin doing? He's like tipping back and forth, and I'm like, okay, what do you think happens? And he's like, well, the chair falls over, the gremlin gets hurt. And I was like, he said that, not me. And so like we walk through like what we do and how we take care of the little gremlin. And so it was like so good, and it's geared at young kids. And you roll to see if the gremlin listens to the advice and what we do the next day and like how it feeds in. And if you get 3 like frustrating days in a row, gremlin causes extra mischief and it's a little like burst of magic and stuff like that. So I don't know, it's really cool to see like some of the different mechanics that come up and different themes that come up with games geared at like really young kids. So yeah, it's interesting to see.
Your son was 2.5 when you started doing this with him. So what was the steps? What was it like trying to, as a parent, get into that headspace? Because imagination is arguably one of the coolest things about being around kids. So that part I think most people will understand, but what's it like to approach a little kid with a game like this?
Yeah. So what we started out with, the first thing was what I like to call interactive story time. So normally, typically, you would sit down, you'd read a book to a kid, and you'd tell them the whole story and everything that happens in it. So I started making up stories and then asking him what happened next. He was pretty young, but he was talking pretty well, so he was able to give short answers, even if it was sometimes just yes and no, like, do you think the dragon will go here or here? Or let's pack the bag. Should we bring this tool or this tool? And it was kind of like making small decisions that would end up impacting the story. So that got him used to affecting the story. He started asking questions about it and getting more creative with some of his answers. And then we started introducing some dice mechanics. The first official tabletop RPG that we played was this game called No Mice, No Meowsters.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's the creator's named Trouser Mouse.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep, that's why I know it.
And it's you play as a cat who is trying to cause mischief for their owner. Like, that's their whole goal in the game. And so it's really rules light. It's very narrative focused. There's some dice rolling, so we did get used to like a little bit of dice mechanics. And that was a really good start for us because it kind of made that bridge into now it's a game on a piece of paper. And then from there, we just started like slowly getting into games that had slightly more complicated dice mechanics. Maybe we'd start out with like D6 games, or there was one that was about flipping coins. So there wasn't like a whole ton of math going on, and we'd help with the counting and whatnot. And we've slowly scaled it up to where now we're using bigger dice. We can add small modifiers, so he's practicing math and things like that. And like we made sure we went through a gradual process, so he's not getting overwhelmed. And that was pretty much how we ended up doing it. So it started out with story time, and then slowly started adding mechanics in.
Mm-hmm. And then TTRPGkids kind of came from that, and probably COVID was a bit of an impact on that too, wasn't it? Because that was all around the same time.
Yes. So shortly after we started doing that is when I started doing TTRPGkids and like writing about some of our experiences with it. We try out a lot of systems with him because of like reviewing for the blog and whatnot. But I do make sure to scale it as he's growing. So I'm not pulling in Dungeons and Dragons quite yet. Like we're doing like, there's D&D hacks that are made specifically for young kids and like slowly kind of building that up. So the games that we're reviewing and talking about on the blog in a lot of ways is growing with him. So over time, it's going to be this progression of games for really young kids. And then we're going to move into like, we're getting into the 5+ range is the target now. And then it's going to be, a few years 8+. We're going to get into games for tweens. And so like, it should be like kind of this chronicle of like that progression in games and the style of adventures that he's interested in.
That's so cool. Like, how cool for him is that too? Like,
yeah.
He'll be able to reflect on that someday. He won't even realize until he's grown. Like,
oh yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So we're going to get into something a lot earlier for current listeners, but you're crowdfunding for TTRPGkids, and I think this is super important that we touch on this because there's a lot of reasons to crowdfund this. So can you talk about what you're doing with Crowdfunder? Baker's Charge is one of the things that I'd like to hear a little bit about, and then we can get into it and just explore that area.
Yeah. So Crowdfunder has a kids and young adult creator event coming up in July. So I am participating in that. I'm kicking off a little early for a couple reasons, but like I'm going to be running through July as part of that event to help fund TTRPGkids because I do run it as a free resource, but there's site costs. Like stuff costs money. I got to pay for like the email and storage and yeah. Yep. So it's to help cover like site fees and things like that, domain name. And then it'll also help to cover convention travel. I'm giving talks at a whole bunch of conventions, and I'm not like getting paid for those. It's like for help. It's like free talks, so that way I can answer questions for people that I normally maybe won't be able to reach through social media. But it does cost money to travel there. So there's that. And then it's also to fund the first print of our how would I put it? The first physical print of one of my games, which is Baker's Charge. So it's kind of, I haven't run a crowdfunding campaign before. I kind of smushed everything that I've been meaning to crowdfund for the past 2 years into this one, like, starter one. So we'll see how it goes. But That's to help support TTRPG Kids and make it more sustainable.
Yeah. So we're talking about conventions there, and I'm super interested in that because being a presenter, it's kind of like the next step to what we're doing. Like, you're talking to those creators like that, and I'm talking to creators like you, and it's just kind of like the next kind of progression when you look at speaking about these kind of topics. So, how did you get in contact with these conventions, and are there any that you're allowed to talk about right now, or is that kind of still a little bit in the works?
Yeah, I could talk about them. So, at least I think most of them. There might be one for later in the year. I can't say anything yet. But the first one that I went to was last year at it was Dallas Fan Expo, and I was contacted by a podcast group called D20 Tales. And
I'm familiar.
Yeah, so they had approached me and said, we're going to this convention. We were recommended to contact you because we wanted to offer something that was like kind of a kid-friendly like addition to like our proposal. And so I was like, sure, we'll try it. So flew down from Michigan to Texas and kind of hung out with this group at the convention for the weekend. And it was a great experience. And I didn't have like a ton of people come to the talk, but there were a few people, and I was able to answer their questions. And it was a really good feeling. So that kind of got me hooked. And then I got invited to be in a group. We mentioned Michael before. So Michael's in the group, Marianne Cullinan, and then Chris Hopper. And we went to South by Southwest EDU and did a panel. Yeah, we did a panel and a workshop there. Oh, that was amazing. So I definitely got hooked on the whole like going to conventions experience and started just reaching out and submitting proposals. Through like TTRPG Kids, I have a pretty big network of people I have featured on the site or interviewed. So I reached out to a few people and was like, hey, do you want to do a panel on topic X? Do you want to do a panel on topic Y? And we got into virtual GaryCon. I just did a talk at Motor City Comic Con, so that's my hometown convention. Going to Origins Game Fair towards the end of June. There's one so I've submitted one for Gen Con online. We're waiting to see on approval, so I don't want to like say what that one is yet, but that one's still under review. And then there's a couple for later in the year that I'm trying to get in on as well. So I don't know. It's just a fun experience to be able to get up there and answer questions. And like the Motor City Comic Con that we just went to, we had so many questions the whole time. Like people were asking through the whole hour, which was great. Like they were interested and we were able to answer it. It's such a good feeling. So yeah, if you just send in your proposal or call someone up or email them and be like, hey, I'm interested in it. They've been really supportive of it. And if you've got like a proposal of, we're bringing this person in, we're going to do a panel and talk. Here's our topics, give it a shot if anyone's interested. So
I got invited to talk at a con, and I unfortunately couldn't go because I had other things scheduled, but it was to talk about quick starts and how important they are to reviewers and the such. And that I was like, I wish I could have done it for that exact reason. I know I'd be immediately enthralled with it and want to do more. So I think it touches like this very cool place where you're getting to interact with the fans or the listeners or the readers in a totally different way that we just don't typically see. And you can talk on this too, Steph, because I typically don't have any clue what most listeners hear or think, aside from the odd one that reaches out and tells me I did something wrong or misinterpreted a rule or something like that. But
I get what you mean, because like I'll do the blog and I know how many people are viewing the site, but then like maybe like one in a while will reach out and like I'll get kind of that feedback. So I know that feeling of like, you're like, okay, what does everybody really think? Or like, is this, where's it going and stuff? Generally, like, it's positive. When I've been at the conventions, like, you're there face to face with a person, so you know, like, what kind of impact it's having, whereas through the screen, you don't see that. And it's been positive at the convention. So I would say, like, maybe for a confidence boost, people might not be seeing it, or like they might not be saying it, but like it is having an impact just based on like what I've seen there. So like that's what's kind of helped with the face-to-face too, is like it's kind of energizing to kind of see the excitement that people get talking about the topic and things like that. So yeah,
I mean, that's really all we can ask for at the end of the day as content reviewers and people who are making stuff so that people can put a lot more time into the thing that we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
You have created a game that you were telling me about before. I love this so much. Baker's Charge. Please tell me about Baker's Charge and what made you decide to pull the trigger on getting this game started.
Yeah, so Baker's Charge came from two things. The first one was I joined the Charge Game Jam by RP, I hope I pronounced the last, Desai. I think I'm pronouncing the last name right, and if not, I'm really sorry. So he ran the Charge Game Jam, and I was like, okay, I'm looking at the mechanics, and I'm like, this kind of feels like in those competitions when somebody gets on a roll, like they do really good one week, and then they like keep doing really good and doing really good. Like it builds up. I'm like, and we're sitting there and we're watching a baking competition show, and I'm like, because we watch a lot of them in our house, like they're fun. And so I'm like, oh, this is the thing. And so it kind of like, I took the Charge Jam and I took baking competition shows and kind of like smushed them together and made this game. And it was pretty well received. I was excited about it. I was like, oh, this is, going pretty well. And so I was thinking about a game to print and wanted to do kind of like a Zine style game. And this one was the perfect size. And it was one of my favorite ones that I've made. It just seemed to flow really well. And I was like, okay, we're doing this one. So Baker's Charge is the first one. It's you play as bakers in a competition. There's 3 rounds. There's pastry, cakes, and bread. And it's random if it's going to be sweet or savory, so you could end up with a savory cake round. And there's challenges that you have to face. Like you might end up with high humidity one round. And so like some of your, like the frosting melts on your cake or something like that. The thermostat is broken. So you end up with like temperature differences and your bread doesn't rise. Things like that can end up happening. And there's some extra challenges, like maybe you have to feed 100 people with your bake. Classic things that will show up in a baking competition where they like throw a little curveball at it. And it is set up to promote collaboration. So if you finish your round and you have extra time left over, you can actually help somebody else in order to get a bonus for yourself later. So it kind of taps into the wholesome baking shows where we've seen where people are like kind of doing each other a solid and like, oh, you hold this while I'm piping on the last like 10 roses on the side of my cookies or something. So it kind of has like a little bit of that collaborative element to it as well. So
that poor person who's trying to pearl a cake and they're just crying. The other person's like, give me the other bag.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Like the one person who always like ends early, they're like, no, do this. I'll help you out. And so you can give a bonus roll to them and then you get like some credit for later to kind of bank up and maybe get a little bit more time further on or re-roll something. So
yeah, I'm not personally too familiar with the charge system. How does that work?
Yeah, so in the charge system, you build up momentum, and so like as you're going through and getting successes, you can earn momentum, and then as you get enough of that, it can give you extra dice to roll. So you kind of you can get on a roll and have like one success lead to the other. So if you've heard of like explosive dice pool mechanics, where that kind of like springs off of each other, this is like that a little bit, but like kind of explosive turns is the way that I kind of picture it. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Listeners may be familiar with RP Desai. That the name he also uses is Renee Peer, creator of I believe it's Fari RPGs, the app.
Yep.
Super good. I loved every single game I played in that, by the way. It's also a very good time to play in there.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the crowdfunder is super important to not only help keep you traveling, but to also get Baker's Charge in people's hands. When exactly is that going to be going live, though?
The crowdfunding launches on June 15th. So it's coming up really soon. I think it'll be launched by the time
It's June 15th.
This goes.
It'll have been launched for 5 days when this
Yes. So June 15th is the date, and it'll be running through early August, like kind of the first week in August. The reason that I am kicking off before the young adult or the kids and young adult event in July is because I am a partner for the event. So I'm also working with, there's maybe about a dozen other creators who I've been like, hey, you got a project coming up, you might want to consider getting in the event. So I've been trying to help them get in there. They're all kicking off in July, so I'm trying to get mine settled before then, as much as possible, so I can like focus on boosting theirs. So it's kind of, yeah.
I think that makes sense, though, and I think that also speaks to who you are in this space, because obviously you want yourself to succeed. Like, everybody wants their stuff to succeed. Like I said, I love TTRPGkids. I think it's a great resource, like, phenomenal, even just to flip through and find new games, because I think at the heart of it, it's just family-friendly games. You don't necessarily need to be playing them with a 5-year-old who's your nephew or something like that. I don't know. There's just a lot of really cool stuff that you're doing with it. But you're also taking that time to help other people get their stuff bumped up in this crowdfunder campaign. Like, it's a lot of work, and I feel like a lot of people won't get to see that part of it. Ideally, they won't get to see that part of it because that part's stressful and scary.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a bit of work. So I am very much looking forward to it, but also, like you said, it is some work and some stress. So I'm kind of like nervously going into it like, oh, I hope it goes okay. That's always kind of like sitting there in the back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So obviously TTRPGkids isn't your full-time job. And typically a lot of these things are hobby in that. But where do you hope TTRPGkids goes, or what do you hope to see succeed outside of just having this really cool thing with you and your family and the growth of this journey of games?
Yeah. So I am hoping that this is something that I can do as maybe more than just kind of a side project at some point. Because of all the chaos during COVID, did end up quitting my engineering job. I was a crash test engineer, and it was a little too difficult to do that at home, like reviewing crash tests remotely.
Yes.
And then also having a 2-year-old who decided he wasn't going to nap anymore at home because there's no daycare. So that kind of shook things up. So now I'm teaching, and I have a little bit more flexibility with that. with the schedule and everything. And I'm hoping to kind of have TTRPG Kids and teaching kind of balance each other, and be sort of like equal parts in my life, like career-wise. That would be really nice. So I want to see TTRPG Kids continue to grow, continue to support other creators, because I think having a space specifically devoted to TTRPGs for kids in all ages is really important, since like a lot of people are interested in it. And so I want to see that grow and reach more people. And then for kind of like my own games, I like to, print a few more of them. When I go to conventions, maybe do a convention booth, because they get kind of like that dual action of, I can get some of my games out there, which is always like, that's a good feeling. So and then, it can be like, hey, there's also the free resource where you can find like all the stuff. So even if people can't like buy the games and stuff, there's still something there to help out.
I love that. Yeah, I kind of hope the same too. I think it's important work, and I think that it's currently a really untapped field. You're starting to see more people lean their games towards kids, and not even from just a marketing standpoint, but from a, hey, kids are a lot smarter than we give them credit for, and they're a heck of a lot of fun to play games with.
Yeah, there's just from, so like when I started doing the interactive story time with my kid, I started out with like, hey, what do you think the bunny does? And like really simple stuff. He really quickly showed me that he could do a lot more than just say like the bunny goes down the hole. And then as we've been playing games, he continually surprises me. Like with the throwing the scroll into the volcano, like that was pretty creative. It was a little destructive, but it was also like really creative. So, yeah, they do cool stuff.
Situation happening with an adult group, though.
Yeah,
I can see like the chaotic dumb kind of come through, like, but like as a kid, that's just, you're like, that'll be cool.
It's just fun.
And then your players are just like, we're gonna see what happens, and they know what happens. They're grown-ups. They know what happens next.
Yeah. The kid's still kind of figuring it out, maybe, but like, yeah.
Steph, where can people support you if they want to give some extra outside of the crowdfunder? Is there any places where they can do that?
Yeah, I've got a Ko-fi account, so the Ko-fi's open, and anything that goes towards the Ko-fi, I'm also kind of putting it towards the crowdfunder stuff, so I'll reduce the crowdfunder goal as like the Ko-fi stuff comes in, and then that'll be also running afterwards. I also have my own games to sell, both on Ko-fi and Itch, so you can find TTRPG Kids games there. Everywhere, it's just search TTRPG Kids as one word, and I'll come up. So, but other than that, the biggest way to like really support is to help share TTRPG Kids. If you see somebody asking for resources, please point them there, because my hope is that it'll answer everybody's questions kind of in one spot. Word of mouth on social media, just if more people are finding it, then I'm happy. So
we got to say it at the end of most episodes that word of mouth is how we grow around here, and that's just kind of true for anybody working in the indie space.
Yeah, because I mean, we want people to like use our work and like find it useful and enjoy it. So that's the big thing, and word of mouth like kind of helps that happen organically.
I can't stress enough that this is a resource not just for parents or not just for you engaging with kids. This is a really cool way for you to check out some new games or introduce another generation to games. It's great. It's really cool stuff. Steph, we're kind of reaching our end point, though. What listeners don't know about this episode, if it's a little shorter than normal or if it's a little bit wonky, is, man, I've had a nightmare of a time trying to get my tech to work. So Did I just glitch out on you, Steph? I'm going to be honest.
A little bit.
Oh, my goodness. Hopefully it's fine. I'll redub it if it's not. But I got 2 questions that I think are super important to ask you. So the first one being, what advice can you give to people who are wanting to start their own, maybe game or project, but they're not really sure where to begin?
Mm-hmm. So if you're looking to start your own project, I'll kind of tweak it a little bit towards the kids angle. Think about specifically what age or skill you're targeting. I actually have a guide. It's free, and it's intended to be for creators as well, called Making a Tabletop RPG for Your Particular Kid. And it kind of walks through, look at who you're making it for, what they're going to be comfortable with, and like what genre they're going to be interested in. Because like my kid, he's okay with playing games about wizards and dragons and things like that. But if we do one about Hilda, or kind of themed after that sort of vein, or about Spider-Man, he's way more into it. So kind of looking at that topic that you want to focus on is really important. And then after that, then you look at the mechanics for what you want to introduce to it. If you're looking at kind of a different type of project, like how I've got the blog or something, making sure that you've got your information organized in like a plan that is sustainable is really important, especially if it's going to be something kind of long-term, because when you're signing up for like a blog, that's like a weekly schedule of I'm releasing, post, and making sure that it's something that you can keep up with and kind of manage your time with is really important. So kind of that initial planning for games, look at the skills that you want to focus on and kind of build up from there with the genre and everything. So, yeah, hopefully that kind of answers.
I think it does. That stuff can apply too when you're not even looking at working with kids, though, like looking at what you're wanting to achieve or what you're, the best thing I can think of is if you're starting to make a game with like your friends in mind, like, what do we actually want to be playing?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're going to know that stuff as you're starting to sit down at the table and figuring it out. It's like when I made that horrible little goblin game that I made. I'm proud of that, but it's not very good. Steph, though, where can people find out more about yourself and TTRPGkids? And the crowdfunder. Of course, the crowdfunder.
Yeah. So if you go to the TTRPGkids.com website, it's got everything on there. That's kind of like the hub. So it's TTRPGkids, KIDS. Everything's one word. You just stick a .com at the end, and then I'll take you there. From there, I have all my social links are on there. We've got an about page, and I have a special link on the homepage that takes you to more info on the Kickstarter, or on the crowdfunder. Got to get Kickstarter out of the vocabulary. It's like the generic, it's, crowdfunder campaign, so.
Yeah, I get you. As always, folks, those links are going to be going down in the description below. Go check out TTRPGkids and go support Steph and the crowdfunder. It's so cool. Steph, thank you so much for joining me on the show this week. It was great, even amidst all these wonderful little tech glitches.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate you working through the technical glitches too, because Like, I know how technology goes. It's all good.
I think you're the first guest who's almost seen me cry. I was very frustrated.
You're fine. You're fine. It's all good. It's all good.
And audience, thank you so much for listening. Steph and TTRPGkids have already launched their crowdfunder right now, so please go and support them using that top link in the description below. Until next time, though, take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you somewhere out there. Bye. Thank you so much to Steph for joining me on the podcast this week. I really wish things had gone smoother because TTRPGkids is such a good project and the website's really great and it deserves all of your support. Really, it's amazing, especially if you're working with kids. Please go and check out the crowdfunder and give Steph some support and some love because they really do deserve it. And thank you so much for sticking around, audience. I know that there were some massive audio issues on my side, but hopefully future episodes will be cleaner and my recording software will be working properly. If you like this show and you want to hear more from me, please consider leaving a review somewhere on the internet or telling a friend because just like Steph said, telling someone helps immensely. Hey, we're super close to episode 100, 4 episodes away actually. So if you have any ideas and you want me to do something special, please let me know, ideally through an email or on Twitter. That's everything from me though. Take care of yourselves. I'll talk to you real soon.